Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for being here again. You know, I was hearing some of the conversation earlier, and I firmly agree that we need to really exercise reaching out to our public and even those individuals that only care when things happen. And it can't be that way anymore. We can't just care when a disaster happens. We all have to be engaged. It's all our community. We are jointly vested in what happens to our community. So I appreciate hearing those comments from our leaders. But I think I would ask at this point that this organization, this great organization that has flourished, are coming together, that maybe we can work on something like that, where we can do some community outreach. I know this is a great one, but we got to find that way to get those regular people that are only interested when a disaster happens, and we've got to get them involved. I mean, we've got some great leaders in all aspects, whether it's with the Forest Service, experts, whether it's a mayor or a supervisor. We need to flourish that, and I heard Supervisor Klein say it's our responsibility, and he's absolutely right. It is our responsibility. This is what we owe to our community. So that said, I just wanted to touch on that. Because I really firmly believe in that. I wear a few hats in the community, and this portion of this conversation is going to be my professional working world with Arizona Water Company. And my career with not only Arizona Water Company, but in the waterworks industry, the public waterworks industry, is very closely approaching 38 years now. And so it doesn't seem like 38 years, but it's every time I look at my employment history, it says 38 years. So I'll have to go with that. But in that time, I've learned that the water industry and water industry for sale, for public, it's a business. We're privately owned, but it's not just a business. It's not just a business for profit. There's huge amounts of accountability with this industry in maintaining the quality of the water. We are heavily regulated by many state, county, and even town and city regulations in various aspects, in the way that we conduct our business, some in how we do business within these communities, and then at even more advanced levels of water quality, making sure that we meet all the state and federal guidelines and specifications for water quality. And that's the major part. That's the message that I now, as a senior statesman to my employees and how our corporate office trains management, is that there is no room for not complying. We are heavily compliant driven, and we cannot cut corners. So we have to expense that. We have to find the methods and the mechanisms to comply. Some of it is business end of it, and the other part of it is through the Department of Environmental Quality and EPA. Those are the two major ones that we deal with, and a lot of them work hand in hand. We have so many, we call them constituents, which would be a contaminant, a possible contaminant in the water. And there are a slew of them. I mean, I can't even number. Some of them are so hard to even spell out, or not maybe even spelling, but pronounce, because there are just so many constituents. They could be a synthetic organic chemical. They could be radionuclides. It's just a whole gambit of a table of constituents that we must test for. And not only that, do we test for it, there's a regimen every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. And then if there's what we call a hit, or a level that we really need to focus on, And then we continue to monitor that at a more expedited level. Instead of 1 or 2 years now, it's maybe every quarter or every month. And so we're mandated to do these things. And not only that, when these constituents reach a level that the federal government and state levels say that there needs to be remediation here. As a water purveyor, it's our obligation to make sure that we provide quality, safe drinking water. And so whatever measures it takes, even though it was not our cause of that constituent or contaminant to reach our water tables, it is our responsibility to make sure it's clean. And so one of the latest ones that has really hit the country is arsenic level. The arsenic is a natural substance in the earth, and water is a corrosive matter. I mean, it really is, and you all know that. You see rust everywhere. And it acts no differently underground in an aquifer. So it erodes and eats away at copper and silver and gold and arsenic. Arsenic is a metal. And so in 2006, the arsenic level, the federal mandate was 50 parts per billion. That was the measure. In 2006, that level was mandated to now be monitored at 10 parts per billion. So any aquifer, any water purveyor that had an arsenic level above 10 now needed to treat and remove levels to get it down below 10%. I'm sorry, 10 parts per billion. And so that's happened all over the country. I can tell you Arizona Water, because we're all over the state, we currently have around 33 treatment facilities in the state because of these markers. In the farmlands, Casa Grande, in that area, there's a high nitrate problem that has occurred because of how many years of farming was going on in the Casa Grande area, right? I mean, decades. Well, all those fertilizers and things like that are now making their way into the aquifer, and so we've got to treat to remove those levels. And so that's the obligation that Arizona Water has. It's a commitment that we have. There's no cutting corners. Everything is very transparent. All the results of our samples are for public. They're public information. Anybody can get to them if they need to. And so it's a total transparent kind of mechanism that we have to live by. And I actually applaud that. I applaud that there are standards that we must still maintain so that we can protect our community, because water is a valuable asset. It's a resource, especially in the Southwest, that everybody's concerned about. And as water purveyors, that's our obligation to ensure that those water quality standards are met. Regarding the Telegraph Fire and the lessons learned and not only the Telegraph Fire, we have businesses or water companies in up north, in Cholo, and they experienced the Chetasky Fire, which came very close to the community as well. And now, here with the Telegraph Fire, we have another experience as a company as a whole. And some of the lessons learned. We are now, because we now know that we're going to have to live with wildland fires in our neighborhoods. It's not always, oh, look at what happened over there. Well, it happened to us. And there's a certain realism when that happens. It really brings it to light, and the focus is now, how are we going to protect our community? And that's the commitment we have as a water purveyor. Regardless of whatever catastrophe is happening, we still are obligated to maintain a good public water system and keep it safe. So with the Telegraph Fire, our obligation, as I said, is to ensure the quality of water for all of our communities. But when we started experiencing wildland fires, we know already that there's going to be a mass amount of water that may be required to, maybe not to put out the forest fire or the wildland fire, but to protect the fringes of your communities. And we saw that with the Telegraph Fire. Adam, I don't know how many of those Type 3 and Type 6 apparatuses we had, but you all saw them. They were just up and down all of our community and highways. Over 100, maybe? 150. Right. And so every one of those loads up water with their tankers, and so that they can battle any residential area fires. And so that, when you multiply a 3 to 5,000 gallon tanker, maybe, or a little less, 300 to 500, it varies on the size, but those are the smaller apparatuses. These are the ones that fight the fires around your homes and things like that. But then there's the larger quantities of the helicopter drops and things like that. So immediately when we start to see these kinds of wildland fires come to our communities, our senses of awareness are at its peak. So in the mechanism part of it, the mechanical end of it, we want to make sure that our booster pumps, our wells are all running. Our tank levels are capped as best as we can. And some of the lessons we learned are that, we may have had some choke points, because here in Miami, Miami proper, we have facilities that were built in the 30s. And obviously if there were I wasn't alive in the 30s, but if there were standards in the 30s, we're talking, 2-inch main lines, 3-inch main lines, and I'm talking nominal size. Today's standards, the minimum of what we install now is a 6-inch main line. And then depending on where we need the water flows to go, they become larger and larger. Just so we can get the volume to where we need. So this was a very, it's always been on my mind since I've been a manager here is, when we have fires and wildland fires, it's not that we don't have the well capacity or the volume of water from our wells and our tanks, it's the delivery mechanism. It's very difficult to move tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of gallons in a 2-inch line. And they're grid systems. They're all, if you can imagine, like your streets are grids that, they go one way and they tie in. And well, underground, we have water systems just like that. They call them grid systems. So they go and they intermingle, they tie together at certain points. There are some dead ends, where the water system ends. But for the most part, within the proper area of a community, there are grid systems. So you can have water coming from different ends and different angles coming to a certain point. But that's something that our company is now investing in for more than one reason. It's an aging infrastructure, but we realize too that it's an undersized infrastructure for today's needs. For domestic use, might get by, but for large demands, fires, things like that, it's going to be a choke point. And, our newer communities, we know this now, so we're building them as communities build, we're building them to fit those sizes. And we work closely with our fire departments, local fire departments. They let us know, hey, in this area, these are the kinds of volumes that we were looking for. So when we're building, like in my Oracle area, Saddlebrook Ranch, that's a whole new development. So the build is already happening. We're coming in with 12-inch main lines, and they're reducing to 8-inch, down to 6-inch as it goes in through the grid system. So, but our challenge here in Miami is that we need to invest for two reasons. It's aging and it's failing. And the second one is we've got to be able to increase those volumes. And so that's what we're doing now. We've been doing it. It's a monumental task. We talk about money. It's no different with us. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to invest, to not just invest, but to to upsize these lines. It's very costly. It's very costly. Sometimes it could be anywhere from $150 to $200 a foot. That's the all-in cost to drop a water line or main line in. So it's very costly. And so the other, because we are a private company, the other challenge that we have is, we're investing, but not only are we investing, we have to go to the Corporation Commission and ask for recovery. Because we just don't have all the resources, just put all that in there. We've got to get some recovery to pay for that. And so how does the recovery mechanism work? You go through rate cases and things like that. So it's a balancing act. You're asking your constituents to help recover the costs. But then again, it's for everybody's benefit. And those are the things, those are regulatory agencies that we have to navigate through to ensure that these things are acceptable and that the company can continue to be a company and furnish the quality service that we all strive to do, and still not put a burden on the entire community. So challenges there. Communications with the fire departments. Every time something like this, me and my staff, we want to be part of that incident command team. So we're first knowledge of what's going on. Talked about investments, water quality. And the other thing that our company is now doing is, because we were involved in these fires, we're now looking at a larger scope of how can we bring resources in if we lose, say, power. Bringing in generators and things like that, so that we can continue to provide this service even during the worst conditions. So didn't mean to ramble on, but I appreciate your time, and thank you for the opportunity.